Hi, friends, how are you all? I'm back to tell you again, lessons 18 to 30 of Steve Chandler's best ways to motivate yourself. Did you like the previous lessons? If you don't like it, if there are any mistakes, please comment. So keep listening. 18. Don't just do something. Sit there, for a long time, all by yourself. Sit quietly, absolutely alone. Completely, relax. Don't allow the television or music to be on. Just be with yourself, watch for what happens. Feel your sense of belonging to the silence, observe insights starting to appear. Observe your relationship with yourself starting to get better and softer and more comfortable. Sitting quietly allows your true dream life to give you hints and flashes of motivation. In this information-rich, interactive, civilized life today, you are either living your dream or living someone else's. And unless you give your own dream the time and space it needs to formulate itself, you'll spend the better part of your life simply helping others make their dreams come true. All of man's troubles, said Blaise Pascal, stem from his inability to sit alone, quietly, in a room for any length of time. Notice that he did not say some of man's troubles, but all. Sometimes, in my seminars on motivation, a person will ask me, why is it that I get my best ideas when I'm in the shower? I usually ask the person, when else during your day are you alone with yourself? Without any distractions, if the person is honest, the answer is never. Great ideas come to us in the shower when it's the only time in the day, when we're completely alone. No television, no movies. No traffic, no radio, no family, no talkative pets. Nothing to distract our mind from conversing with itself. Thinking, said Plato, is the soul talking to itself. People worry they will die of boredom or fear if they are alone for any length of time. Other people have become so distraction addicted that they would consider sitting alone by themselves like being in a sensory deprivation tank. The truth is that the only real motivation we ever experience is self-motivation that comes from within. And being alone with ourselves will always give us motivating ideas if we stay with the process long enough. The best way to truly understand the world is to remove yourself from it. Psychic entropy, the seesaw mood swing between boredom and anxiety, occurs when you allow yourself to become confused by massive input. By being perpetually busy, glued to your cell phone, out in the world all day with no time to reflect, you will guarantee yourself an eventual overwhelming sense of confusion. The cure is simple and painless. The process is uncomplicated. You do not need to leave your room, said Franz Kafka. Remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen. Simply wait. Do not even wait. Be quite still and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice, it will roll in ecstasy at your feet. In other words, don't just do something, sit there. 19. Use your brain chemicals. There are drugs that you can use to motivate yourself with, and I'm not talking about amphetamine or crack, a deadly form of child's play. Instead, you can get into those energizing chemicals in your system that get activated when you laugh, or sing, or dance, or run, or hug someone. When you're having fun, your body chemistry changes and you get new biochemical surges of motivation and energy. And there isn't anything you do that can't be transformed into something interesting and uplifting. Viktor Frankl has written startling accounts of his life in the Nazi concentration camps, and how some prisoners created new universes unto themselves inside their own minds. It might sound absurd, but truly imaginative people can access their inner chemical creativity in the loneliness of a prison cell. Don't keep trying to go outside yourself searching for something that's fun. It's not out there anywhere. It's inside. The opportunity for fun is in your own energy system, your synergy of heart and mind. That's where you'll find it. Pro Football Hall of Famer Fran Tarkenton recommends looking at any task you do as fun. If it's not fun, he says, you're not doing it right. People who get high on marijuana often find they can laugh at anything. The problem with them is that they think this kind of fun is inherent in the marijuana. It's not. The capacity for fun was already there inside of them. The marijuana just artificially opened them up to it. But the physical and psychological price paid for such a drugged opening is not worth the high. I wish I didn't know this firsthand, but I do. The price drug users pay is this: their self-esteem suffers because they didn't create the fun they had. They thought the drugs did it for them. So they keep shrinking, the more they use, into greater paranoia and self-disgust. Soon they're using the drug just to feel normal. William Burroughs, a former drug addict and author of Naked Lunch, discovered something that was very interesting and bitterly amusing to him after finally recovering from his addictions. There isn't any feeling you can get on drugs, he said, that you can't get without drugs. Make a commitment to yourself to find the natural highs you need to stay motivated. Start by finding out what it does to your mood and energy to laugh, to sing, to dance, to walk, to run, to hug someone, or to get something done. Then support your experiments by telling yourself that you're not interested in doing anything that isn't fun. If you can't immediately see the fun in something, find a way to create it. Once you have made a task fun, you have solved the problem of self-motivation. 20. Leave high school forever. Most of us feel like we've been left stranded in high school forever, like something happened there that we've never shaken off. Before high school, in our earlier and more carefree childhoods, we were creative dreamers filled with a boundless sense of energy and wonder. But in high school something got turned around. For the first time in our lives, we began fearing what other people were thinking of us. All of a sudden our mission in life became not to be embarrassed. We were afraid to look bad, and so we made it a point not to take risks. I'll never forget something that happened to my friend, Richard Schwartz, in high school. He is now a respected photographer, and I won't need to ask his permission to tell this story about him. Richard and I were walking home from school one day and all of a sudden he stopped in his tracks, his face frozen with horror. I looked at him and asked what was wrong. I thought he was about to suffer some kind of seizure. He then pointed down at his pants and wordlessly showed me where his belt had missed a loop. I spent the whole day like this, he finally said. It was impossible for him to measure what everybody thought of him as they passed him in the halls, perhaps seeing the belt had missed a loop. The damage to his reputation was probably beyond repair. That was high school. Today, when I give my seminars on motivation, I love the periods when I take questions from the audience. But many times I can see the painfully adolescent looks of self-consciousness on people's faces when they ponder the risk of asking a question in front of the group. This habit of worrying more about what others think of our thoughts than we do about our own thinking usually begins in high school, but it can last a lifetime. It is time to be aware of what we're doing and, once again, leave high school. It's time to reach back to those pre-high school days of innocent creativity and social fearlessness, and draw on that former self. By the way, I finally came up with a way to deal with the moments of silence that fill a seminar room when I ask for questions. I go to the board and make 5 circles. Then I tell the audience that I used to say, in my classes, if there are no questions at this point, we'll take a break. People always want to take a break, so there wasn't much incentive for asking questions. But questions are the most fun part of a seminar for me, so I came up with this game. After 5 questions, we take a break. Now I find people in the audience urging people around them to join in asking questions so we can take our breaks sooner. Although it's an amusing artificial way to jumpstart the dialogue I'm looking for, what it really does is take the pressure off. It takes the participants out of high school. Most people don't realize how easily they can create the social fearlessness they want to have. Instead, they live like they are still teenagers, reacting to the imagined judgments of other people. They end up designing their lives based on what other people might be thinking about them. A life designed by a teenager. Would you want one? But you can leave that mindset behind. You can motivate yourself by yourself, without depending on the opinions of others. All it takes is a simple question. As Emerson asked, why should the way I feel depend on the thoughts in someone else's head? 21. Learn to lose your cool. You can create a self that doesn't care that much about what people think. You can motivate yourself by leaving the painful self-consciousness of high school behind, because our tendency is to go so far in the timid non-assertive, direction, it might be a profitable overcorrection to adopt these internal commands: look bad, take a risk, lose face, be yourself, share yourself with someone, open up, be vulnerable, be human, leave your comfort zone, get honest, experience the fear, do it anyway. Show me a guy who's afraid to look bad, said actor René Auberjonois, and I'll show you a guy you can beat every time. The first time that I ever spoke to author and psychotherapist Devers Brandon, it was over the telephone, and she agreed to work with me on building my own self-confidence and personal growth. It wasn't long into the phone conversation before she asked me about my voice. I am very interested in your voice, she said, with a tone of curiosity. Hoping she might be ready to give me a compliment, I asked her to explain. Well, she said, it's so lifeless. A real monotone. I wonder why that is. Embarrassed, I had no explanation. This conversation took place long before I had become a professional speaker, and it was also long before I ever took any acting lessons. It was long before I learned to sing in my car, too. Yet I was completely unaware and very surprised that it seemed to her that I was coming across with a voice like someone out of Night of the Living Dead. The truth was that during that period in my life, I was living scared. Things weren't going well for me financially. I had serious health problems in my family, and I had that mildly suicidal feeling that accompanies an increasing sense of powerlessness over one's problems. I now think one way a lot of men hide their fears is by assuming a macho kind of dull indifference. I know now that's what I had done. That a psychotherapist could hear it immediately in my voice was unnerving, though. Trying to understand why I covered fear with indifference. Remembered that back in my high school the cool guys were always the least enthusiastic guys. They spoke in monotones, emulating their heroes James Dean and Marlon Brando. Brando was the coolest of all. He was so indifferent and unenthusiastic you couldn't even understand him when he spoke. One of the first homework assignments Devers Brandon gave me was to rent the video Gone with the Wind and study how fearlessly Clark Gable revealed his female side. This sounded weird to me. Gable a female? I knew Gable was always considered a true man's man in all those old movies, so I couldn't understand what Devers was talking about, or how it would help me. But when I watched the movie, it became strangely clear. Clark Gable allowed himself such a huge emotional range of expression that I could actually identify scenes where he was revealing a distinctly female side to his character's personality. Did it make him less manly? No, curiously, it made him more real and more compelling. From that time on, I lost my desire to hide myself behind an indifferent, monotonous person. I committed myself to get on the road to creating a self that included a wider range of expression, without a nervous preoccupation with coming off like a man's man. I also started noticing how much we seem to love vulnerability in others, but don't trust it in ourselves. But we can learn to trust it, just a little at first. Then we can build that vulnerability until we're not afraid to open up into an ever-widening spectrum of self-revelation. By losing face, we connect to the real excitement of life. And what if I don't always come off as an indifferent man's man? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. 22. Kill your television. My brother used to own a t-shirt store, and one of the most popular shirts for sale said, "Kill your television." I bought that t-shirt with the picture of a TV being blown up. It still makes people nervous to look at it when I wear it today. You can actually change your life by turning off your television. Maybe, just one evening a week, to start with. What would happen if you stop trying to find life in other people's shows and let your own life become the show you got hooked on? Cutting down on television is sometimes terrifying to the electronically addicted, but don't be afraid. You can detox slowly. If you're watching too much television and you know it, you might find it useful to ask this one question: which side of the glass do I want to live on? When you are watching television, you are watching other people do what they love doing for a living. Those people are on the smart side of the glass, because they are having fun, and you are passively watching them have fun. They are getting money, and you are not. There's nothing wrong with occasionally watching other people do what they love doing. But the average household now does this for 7 hours a day. Are they living on the side of the glass that will advance their lives? Big advertisers hope not. Here's a good test for you to determine if television motivates you more than books do. Try to remember what you watched on television a month ago. Think hard. What effect are those shows having on the inspired side of your brain? Now think about the book that you read a month ago. Or even the e-zine you read last week. Which made a more valuable and lasting impression? Which form of entertainment better leads you in the direction of self-motivation? Today, the growing fascination with going online is an improvement over television, especially if you interact. Communicating inside thoughtful chat rooms and sending and receiving email both grow the brain. Television does the opposite. Groucho Marx once said he found television very educational. Every time someone turns it on, he said, I go in the other room to read a book. 23. Break out of your soul cage. Our society encourages us to seek comfort. Most products and services, advertised day and night, are designed to make us more comfortable and less challenged, and yet, only challenge causes growth. Only challenge will test our skills and make us better. Only challenge and the self-motivation to engage the challenge will transform us. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to create a more skillful self, so it is up to you to constantly look for challenges to motivate yourself with. And it's up to you to notice when you're buried alive in a comfort zone. It's up to you to notice when you are spending your life, in the image of the poet William Olson, like a flower living under the wind. Use your comfort zones to rest in, not to live in. Use them consciously, to relax and restore your energy as you mentally prepare for your next challenge. But if you use comfort zones to live in forever, they become what rock singer Sting calls your soul cages. Break free. Fly away. Experience what the philosopher Fichte meant when he said, being free is nothing. Becoming free is heavenly. 24. Run your own plays, design your own life's game plan. Let the game respond to you rather than the other way around. Be like Bill Walsh, the former head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Everybody thought he was a kind of eccentric, because of how extensively he planned his plays in advance of each game. Most coaches would wait to see how the game unfolded, then respond with plays that reacted to the other team. Not Bill Walsh. Walsh would pace the sidelines with a big sheet of plays that his team was going to run, no matter what. He wanted the other team to respond to him. Walsh won a lot of Super Bowls with his unorthodox proactive approach. But all he did was to act on the crucial difference between creating and reacting. You can create your own plans in advance so that your life will respond to you. If you can hold the thought that at all times your life is either a creation or a reaction, you can continually remind yourself to be creating and planning. Creation and reaction have the same letters in them, exactly, they are anagrams. Perhaps that's why people slip so easily out of one and into the other. Many of us can spend whole days reacting without being aware of it. We wake up reacting to news on the clock radio. Then we react to feelings in our body. Then we start reacting to our spouses or our children. Soon we get in the car and react to traffic, honking the horn, and using sign language. Then, at work, we see an email on our computer screen and react to that. We react to stupid customers and insensitive bosses who are intruding on our day. During a break, we react to a waitress at lunch. This habit of reacting can go on all day, every day. We become goalies in the hockey game of life. With pucks flying at us incessantly, it's time to play another position. It's time to fly across the ice with the puck on our own stick ready to shoot at another goal. Robert Fritz, who has written some of the most profound and useful books on the differences between creating and reacting, says, when your life itself becomes the subject matter of the creative process, a very different experience of life opens to you, one in which you are involved with life at its very essence. Plan your day the way Bill Walsh planned his football games. See the tasks ahead as plays you're going to run. You'll feel involved in your life, at its very essence, because you'll be encouraging the world to respond to you. If you don't choose to do that, the life you get won't be an accident. As an old Jewish folk saying puts it, a person who does not make a choice makes a choice. 25. Find your inner Einstein. The next time you see a picture of Albert Einstein, realize that that's actually you. See Albert Einstein and say, there I am. Every human has the capacity for some form of genius. You don't have to be good with math or physics to experience genius level in your thinking. To experience Einstein's creative level of thinking, all you have to do is habitually use your imagination. This is a difficult recommendation for adults to follow, though, because adults have become accustomed to using their imaginations for only one thing: worrying. Adults visualize worst-case scenarios all day long. All their energy for visualization is channeled into colorful pictures of what they dread. What they don't comprehend is that worry is a misuse of the imagination. The human imagination was designed for better things. People who use their imaginations to create with often achieve things that worriers never dream of achieving, even if the worriers possess much higher IQs. People who habitually access their imaginations are often hailed by their colleagues as geniuses, as if genius was a genetic characteristic. They would be better understood as people who are practiced at accessing their genius. Recognition of the power of this genius in all of us prompted Napoleon to say, imagination rules the world. As a child, you instinctively used your imagination as it was intended. You daydreamed and made stuff up. You were a daydream believer by day, and in your right brain at night you sailed down a river of dreams. If you go back into that state of self-confidence and dream again, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how many innovative and immediate solutions you come up with to your problems. Einstein used to say, imagination is more important than knowledge. When I first heard he'd said that, I didn't know what he meant. I always thought additional knowledge was the answer to every difficult problem. I thought if I could just learn a few more important things, then I'd be okay. What I didn't realize was that the very thing I needed to learn was not knowledge, but skill. What I needed to learn was the skill of proactively using my imagination. And once I'd learned that skill, the first task was to begin imagining the vision of who I wanted to be. Songwriter Fred Knipe once wrote a song about this. It was for the soundtrack of a video produced for teenagers, about how to visualize themselves succeeding at what they wanted to do. That's you / in your wildest dreams / doing the wildest things / no one else can do. If you / just love and keep those dreams / the wildest dreams / you'll make yourself come true. To make ourselves come true, we need to develop the strength to dream. Dreaming, in its proactive sense, is strong work. It's the design stage of creating the future. It takes confidence and it takes courage. But the greatest thing about active dreaming is not in the eventual reaching of the goal. The greatest thing is what it does to the dreamer. Forget the literal attainment of your dream for now. Focus on just going for it. By simply going for the dream, you make yourself come true. 26. Run toward your fear. The world's best kept secret is that on the other side of your fear there is something safe and beneficial waiting for you. If you pass through even a thin curtain of fear, you will increase the confidence you have in your ability to create your life. General George Patton said, "Fear kills more people than death." Death kills us but once, and we usually don't even know it. But fear kills us over and over again, subtly at times and brutally at others. But if we keep trying to avoid our fears, they will chase us down like persistent dogs. The worst thing we can do is close our eyes and pretend they don't exist. Fear and pain, says psychologist Nathaniel Branden, should be treated as signals not to close our eyes but to open them wider. By closing our eyes, we end up in the darkest of comfort zones. Buried alive. Janis Joplin's biography, which chronicled her death from alcohol and drug abuse, was aptly titled Buried Alive. To Janis, as to so many similarly troubled people, alcohol provided an artificial and tragically temporary antidote to fear. It is no accident that in the old frontier days, the nickname for whiskey was false courage. There was a time in my life, not too many years ago, when my greatest fear of all was public speaking. It didn't even help that fear of speaking in front of people was people's number one fear, even greater than the fear of death. This fact once caused comedian Jerry Seinfeld to point out that most people would rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. For me, it ran even deeper than that. As a child, I could not give oral book reports. I'd plead with my teachers to let me off the hook. I would offer to do 2, even 3 written book reports if I didn't have to do the oral one. Yet as my life went on, I wanted to be a public speaker more than anything. My dream was to teach people everywhere to learn the ideas that lead to self-motivation, the ideas that I had learned. But how could I ever do this if stage fright left me frozen with fear? Then one day, as I was driving in Phoenix flipping through the radio stations looking for good music, I accidentally happened upon a religious station where a histrionic preacher was yelling, "Run toward your fear. Run right at it." I hastened to change the station, but it was too late. Deep down I knew that I had just heard something I needed to hear. No matter what station I turned to, all I could hear was that madman's words, "Run toward your fear." The next day I still couldn't get it out of my mind, so I called a friend of mine who was an actress. I asked her to help me get into an acting class she had once told me about. I told her I thought I was ready to overcome my fear of performing in front of people. Although I lived in a high state of anxiety the first weeks of that class, there was no other way around my fear. There was no real way to run from it any longer, because the more I ran, the more pervasive it got. I knew I had to turn around and run toward the fear or I would never pass through it, Emerson once said. The greater part of courage is having done it before, and that soon became true of my speaking in public. Fear of doing it can only be cured by doing it. And soon my confidence was built by doing it again and again. The rush we get after running through the waterfall of fear is the most energizing feeling in the world. If you are ever in an undermotivated mood, find something you fear and do it, and watch what happens. 27. Create the way you relate. We can't create our truest selves without creating relationships in the process. Relationships are everywhere. Relationships are everything. There is no end to relationship, said the Indian spiritual leader, Krishnamurti. There may be the end of a particular relationship, but relationship can never end. To be is to be related. I have trained many corporations with a 4-part seminar series. The first 3 parts are on self-motivation, and the final part is on relationship building. Sometimes CEOs ask me up front, ahead of the training, if I don't have that ratio out of balance. Shouldn't you have more of it beyond relationship building? They ask. After all, team building and customer relations are surely more important than self-motivation. I stand by my ratio. We can't relate to others if our relationship with ourselves is poor. A commitment to personal motivation comes first, because who wants to have a relationship with someone who is not motivated in any way? When we do get to the 4th part, relationship building, the focus is on creativity. Creativity is the most neglected and yet most useful aspect of relationship building. In relationships, most of us think with our emotions rather than our minds. But to think with our feelings instead of our minds puts us in the unresourceful state that Colin Wilson describes as being upside down. When we view relationships as opportunities for creativity, they always get better. When our relationships get better, we are even more motivated. My youngest daughter, Margie, was in 4th grade when a very shy girl in her class accidentally put a large black mark on her own nose with an indelible marker. Many of the kids in the class pointed at her and started to laugh. The little girl was finally reduced to tears of embarrassment. At some point Margie walked over to the girl to give her some comfort. Margie's astonished teacher related this story to me. Impulsively, Margie picked up the. In a few moments the entire class had black marks on their noses, and the shy girl who was once crying was laughing. At recess, Margie's class all went out on the playground with marked noses, and they were the envy of the school, obviously into something unusual and cool. This story is interesting to me because of how Margie used her creativity and her mind instead of her emotions to solve a problem. She elevated herself up into her mind, where something clever could be done. If she had used her feelings to think with, she might have expressed anger at the class for laughing at the girl, or sadness and depression. Anytime you take a relationship problem up into the mind, you have unlimited opportunities to get creative. Conversely, when you send a relationship problem down the elevator into the lower half of the heart, you risk staying stuck in the problem forever. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel anything. Feel everything, notice your feelings. Just don't think with them. When there's a relationship problem to be solved, travel up your ladder to the most creative you. You'll soon realize that we create the relationships we have in our lives. They don't just happen. We are each of us angels with only one wing, said the Italian artist, Luciano de Crescenzo, and we can only fly embracing each other. 28. Try interactive listening. The principle of using interactivity as a creativity builder is not restricted to computer games or chat rooms. Once we become fully conscious of this principle, we can find ways to become more interactive everywhere. We can even make conversations with our family and friends more interactive than they once were. We all have certain business associates or family members that we think of as we do television sets. As they speak to us, we have a feeling that we already know what they're going to say. This lowers our own consciousness level, and a form of mental laziness sets in. In the past, we might have punctuated our sleepy listening with meaningless words and phrases, such as exactly and there you go, but we weren't truly listening. But that passive approach shortchanges ourselves and the people we are listening to. When we are listened to, wrote Brenda Uland, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. The more thoughtful our questions get to be, the more interactive the conversations. Look for opportunities for interactivity to motivate yourself to higher levels of experience. 29. Embrace your willpower. I can't tell you how many people have told me that they have no willpower. Do you think the same thing? If you think you have no willpower, you are undermining your own success. Everyone has willpower. To be reading this sentence, you must have willpower. The first step in developing your willpower, therefore, is to accept its existence. You have willpower just as surely as you have life. If someone were to put a large barbell weight on the floor in front of you and ask you to lift it and you knew you could not, you would not say, I have no strength. You'd say, I'm not strong enough. Not strong enough is more truthful language, because it implies that you could be strong enough if you worked at it. It also implies that you do have strength. It is the same with willpower. Of course you have willpower. When you accept that little piece of chocolate cake, it is not because you have no willpower. It is only because you choose not to exercise it in that instance. The first step toward building willpower is to celebrate the fact that you've got it. You've got willpower, just like that muscle in your arm. It might not be a very strong muscle, but you do have that muscle. The second step is to know that your willpower, like a muscle in your arm, is yours to develop. You are in charge of making it strong or letting it atrophy. It is not grown by random external circumstances. Willpower is a deliberate, volitional process. When I left college to join the Army, one of the reasons I decided to sign up was because I thought it might help teach me to develop my self-discipline. But somehow I had not been aware of the self-discipline. I wanted discipline to be given to me by someone else. I found out in boot camp that others do not give willpower and self-discipline. The drill sergeant might have been persuasive and inspiring, or at times terrifying, but he couldn't make me do anything until I decided to do it. Nothing happened until I generated the will to make it happen. Make a promise to yourself to be clear and truthful about your own willpower. It is always there. 30. Perform your little rituals. See yourself as a shaman or medicine man who needs to dance and sing to get the healing started. Make up a ritual that is yours and yours alone, a ritual that will be your own shortcut to self-motivation. As you read through these various ways to motivate yourself, you might have noticed that action is often the key. Doing something is what leads to doing something. It's a law of the universe. An object in motion stays in motion. The great basketball player Jack Twyman used to begin each practice session by getting to the court early and taking 200 shots at the basket. It always had to be 200 shots, which he counted out. And it didn't matter if he already felt tuned up after 20 or 30 shots. He had to shoot 200. It was his ritual, and it always got him into a state of self-motivation for the rest of the practice session or game. My friend Fred Knipe, now an Emmy Award-winning television writer and comedian, does something he calls driving for ideas. When he has a major creative project to accomplish, he gets in his car and drives around the desert near Tucson until ideas begin to come to him. His theory is that the act of driving gives the anxious, logical left side of his brain something to do so the right side of his brain can be freed up to suggest ideas. It's like giving your child some toys to play with so you can read the evening email on your computer. In his book about songwriting, Write from the Heart, Jon Stewart writes about composer and arranger Glenn Gould, who had a ritual for finding a new melody or musical idea when he seemed to be stuck and nothing was coming. He'd turn on 2 or 3 radios at the same time, all to different stations. He'd sit and compose his own music while listening to music on the 3 radios. This would short-circuit his conscious mind and free up the creative subconscious. It would overload the left side of his brain so the right could open up and create, without judgment. My own ritual for jumpstarting self-motivation is walking. Many times, in my life I have had a problem that seemed too overwhelming to do anything about, and my ritual is to take the problem out for a long, long walk. Sometimes I won't come back for hours. But time and again, during the course of my walk something comes out of nowhere. Some idea for an action that will quickly solve the problem. One of the reasons I think this ritual works for me is that a ritual is action. Starting a ritual is taking an action that leads toward finding the solution. The dancing medicine man is already doing something. Make up little rituals for yourself that will act as self-starters. They will have you in action before you feel like getting into action. Rituals always override your built-in hesitation so that you can get yourself motivated in a predictable, controllable way. If you are not a writer or painter or poet, you might be thinking right now that this does not apply to you. But that's what I would call the creative fallacy. In fact, your entire life is yours to create. There are no creative professions that stand apart from others, like an exclusive. There are no creative professions that stand apart from others, like an exclusive club. Martin Luther King Jr. used to say, be an artist at whatever you do, even if you are a street sweeper, be the Michelangelo of street sweepers. Thank you very much for listening to chapters 18 through 30 of Steve Chandler's book, The Best Ways to Motivate Yourself. Thank you also for staying with me. Finally, I conclude with my wishes for your health and overall well-being. Today's lesson. Bye.